Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're tossing the traditional agenda right out the window because, honestly, the 2026 Spanish Grand Prix at Jerez was just absolute high-octane madness. We're skipping the usual pleasantries and diving headfirst into a weekend that completely scrambled the MotoGP landscape. So strap in, because what went down in Andalusia was literally straight out of a movie.
17. Just let that sink in for a second. That's the unbelievable position Marc Marquez found himself in during Saturday's completely chaotic sprint, after actually leading the pack in the sudden, treacherous rain. He wipes out at the final corner, right? But then he sprints to the pit lane, jumps on his wet bike, drops all the way down to 17th place, and then, miraculously, slices his way back through the entire field to take the win. I mean, it was arguably the craziest 12 laps we've seen in years.
But here's the kicker. That Saturday miracle was literally just the opening act. So what actually happens when a MotoGP weekend goes completely off the rails? Well, today we're going to break down this wild ride into 3 distinct acts. We're talking intense family feuds, absolutely catastrophic factory meltdowns, and a massive shift in the championship hierarchy that nobody saw coming.
So let's get right into it. Act 1, the brother war.
If you thought the tension over in the Gresini garage was thick before, Jerez took it to a whole new level. Marc's weekend was the definition of a roller coaster. On Saturday, we got that superhuman sprint comeback. But Sunday? Sunday was an absolute nightmare. Despite nailing the whole shot from pole position in the main race, Marc lost the front end at turn 11. He washed out at a terrifying 200 kilometers per hour. Thankfully, he walked away without a scratch, but man, that was a massive, massive blow to his momentum. Now contrast that with his younger brother, Alex. After crashing out of the lead himself in Saturday's rain, Alex came back on Sunday with an absolute masterclass. He was flying right off the line, hunted down Marc, and made the pass on lap 2 at turn 6. From there, it was smooth sailing. He was completely unchallenged, taking back-to-back Spanish Grand Prix victories by almost 2 full seconds. He even said later that he felt like he was dancing with the bike, just perfectly using those recent aero and electronic updates to unleash the Ducati's true potential. And you know what's really crucial here? It's how Marc reacted. There were zero excuses. A very humble Marc flat out admitted that Alex was in a class of his own. He basically confessed he just wasn't at the level to fight his brother that day, adding that 90% of crashes are the rider's fault. That is an incredibly stark, honest admission from a 9-time world champ. It really makes you wonder if that massive shadow he usually casts over the paddock is finally starting to lift for his brother. Real quick, before we move over to the factory teams, we've got to take a brief detour because Franco Morbidelli made some incredible history on Saturday. He carved his way from 18th on the grid all the way to P3 in the sprint. But honestly, what makes this so special isn't just the riding itself. It's what he said afterward. He dedicated this long-awaited podium to those who are suffering and feel less than. Just a deeply moving, genuine moment that really captured the heart of the paddock. All right, moving on to Act 2, Factory Ducati's historic slump. So, while Gresini was busy celebrating Alex's win, there was just sheer panic unfolding next door at the official Lenovo team. The reigning giants of the sport are officially hitting the panic button. The scale of Francesco Bagnaglia's disaster on Sunday was just staggering. The crazy thing is, Pecco had actually found a minor setup change that made the bike feel competitive again, but the second the lights went out, everything unraveled. He plummeted from 9th all the way down to 13th on the very first lap and eventually had to retire on lap 12 because of a fatal brake failure. His own words paint a pretty terrifying picture. He said, "I couldn't stop the motorcycle and I couldn't reduce my speed." I mean, think about that. That is a horrifying reality when you're flying down a track at MotoGP speeds. It looks like this malfunction was linked to an overheating brake disc issue. Interestingly, this same problem popped up on Jorge Martin's Aprilia during the sprint, but for Bagnaia, it was a completely race-ending catastrophe. Which brings us to a really alarming number, 9. That is the staggering number of consecutive races without a single podium for the official Ducati Lenovo team. You'd literally have to go all the way back to their totally dismal run between 2012 and 2014 to find a drought this bad for the Italian squad. And the sheer gravity of this situation was summed up perfectly by Marc Marquez. Even though he's riding that same GP26 machinery, he dropped a massive truth bomb on everyone saying, "With our current level, we can't compete for the title." Look, when a rider of Marc's caliber publicly waves the white flag on his title hopes this early in the season, you know for sure the panic over in Bologna is very, very real. Which brings us to Act 3.
the new championship order.
The sheer chaos of Jerez didn't just shuffle the deck. It completely flipped the table on the entire championship order. Marco Bezzecchi came into Jerez riding high on a historic 5-race winning streak. And yeah, while that streak did finally snap, Bezzecchi played a remarkably smart long game here. On Saturday, his sprint was totally ruined when a tear-off visor got stuck on his rear tire. Talk about bad luck, right? But on Sunday, realizing he just didn't have the pace to catch Alex Marquez, he didn't force it. He settled into a perfect rhythm, locked down P2, and left Jerez looking incredibly satisfied.
And honestly, that strategy paid off beautifully. Breaking down the points, Bezzecchi actually increased his overall championship lead to 101 points. He's followed by Jorge Martin sitting at 90, and then you've got Fabio Di Gianantonio jumping up into third with 71 points. It's an absolute lockdown of the top 3 spots by Italian riders right now, which just proves that steady consistency is just as lethal as raw, blinding speed.
On the flip side of that, we have to talk about the number 44. That's the massive point deficit Marc Marquez is now staring down. Between that brutal Sunday crash and Bezzecchi just racking up steady podiums, Marc has slid all the way down to 5th in the overall standings. A 44-point mountain is incredibly steep to climb, even if you are an all-time great.
So, as the teams pack up the paddock, the power hierarchy is crystal clear. Just like the press has been noting all weekend, Aprilia is absolutely running the show in this 2026 MotoGP season. They've got the pace, they've got the consistency, and right now they hold all the cards, while Ducati is stuck burning the midnight oil, just desperately searching for answers.
All right, let's wrap things up with an epilogue, the great attendance blunder.
Let's shift gears for a quick palate cleanser to close out today's explainer. Because off the track, there was a completely bizarre PR disaster unfolding. So during the weekend, MotoGP proudly announces that Jerez had hosted an all-time record crowd of over 300,000 fans, totally eclipsing the massive record set at Le Mans. Amazing, right? Well, by Monday night, they had to issue a very, very embarrassing correction. The actual attendance was 181,289. They literally missed the mark by well over 100,000 people. Dorna's chief commercial officer had to come out and publicly apologize, straight up admitting they made a complete hash of this in their eagerness to hype up the atmosphere. But, to be totally fair to Jerez, even though it wasn't the all-time global record they originally claimed, that 181,000 figure is still the best attended Grand Prix at the Spanish circuit in nearly a decade. So the fans absolutely showed up in droves, even if the officials' calculators completely malfunctioned. Which brings us to the ultimate question as we look ahead to the rest of the season. Is the Factory Ducati dynasty truly dead in the water? Or can Borgo Panigale pull off a miracle and stop this Aprilia runaway train at the upcoming French Grand Prix? Le Mans is so often the ultimate test for the world hierarchy, and the stakes, well, they've literally never been higher. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time as we keep tracking every twist and turn of this wild 2026 season.